Good afternoon. You are juror number 92, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, first of all, a couple matters before I turn over the attorneys for questioning. First thing is I'm going to swear you in because all your answers have to be under oath. So if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully answer all questions about your qualifications to serve as a juror?
I do.
All right. Thank you. First of all, you have plexiglass in front of you and between us. The attorneys also have a plexiglass shield in front of them, and they're quite a bit away from you. The point being, we have enough precautions that if you feel more comfortable taking your mask off, okay, feel free to do so.
Okay.
And if you feel like you want to put it back on, also feel free to do
Okay.
whatever is appropriate.
Okay.
Now, you filled out a questionnaire, and we appreciate you doing that. It gives us a lot of good information to start with. Was everything true on the questionnaire?
Yes.
All right. Any changes or additions to the questionnaire?
I don't think so.
Okay, and asking that question cold kind of doesn't really usually yield a response.
Oh. Yeah.
But when the attorneys go through the questionnaire and they ask you specific questions and answers,
Mm-hmm.
it might invoke a memory that you go, oh, I should have included this or
Okay.
that, or that's not accurate, or that opinion has evolved.
Mm-hmm.
My point being that no matter what the question is, you should feel comfortable and free to give an answer that is different from what's in your questionnaire. We're just looking for where you're at right now and what's the most honest and accurate answer you can give. And when the lawyers are asking you the questions, it's very likely, because it's been several months, that they will read the question and your answer. They're not trying to be confrontational. It's just to refresh your memory of what you said. But right now you don't know of anything, but later on, feel free to comment.
Say something. Okay.
Now, one of the things you were not supposed to do, or the questionnaire told you, was not to follow any media since you are a potential juror. We understand, however, that it's been a couple months since you filled out the questionnaire, and given the amount of coverage this case is getting, you might have been exposed inadvertently to information about this case or related cases, things like, pretrial matters, lawyers, anything like that. Is there anything of substance that you've heard about in the intervening time between the questionnaire and today?
The settlement.
Okay, and what do you remember by hearing about the settlement specifically?
The amount that was given to the family.
Okay, do you remember the amount?
$27 million.
Okay. What effect do you think that's going to have on your ability to serve as a juror in this case?
None at all.
Okay. Have you thought through that process?
Serving?
Serving, knowing this settlement.
Oh, it doesn't make any difference in my decision making.
Okay. I think you indicated on your questionnaire that you could be fair and impartial in this case. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's like question 10 answer in part 1. So you came in after the questionnaire, fair and impartial. Has that knowledge of that settlement moved you off that position one way or the other?
No.
Okay. You recognize that case, it's a separate case, it's a civil case, different parties, different legal issues, different law. It has no bearing in this case. Do you accept that?
I do.
Okay. And as far as you know, it's not going to affect it, and if it's not in evidence, which it won't be, you won't consider it as part of this case?
I will not.
Okay, excellent. And that brings up the general point, which is everybody's heard something about this case. There's certain facts that people have learned from the media or maybe through conversations. Some of it may be accurate, some of it may not be. And you may have even formed certain opinions based on what you know about the case. Do you think you can put aside all the things you've heard and any opinions you might have formed and just decide this case just on the evidence of the law that you hear in the courtroom?
I do.
Okay. The law that comes from me. Even if you think it should be different, you'll accept what I tell you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Did you recognize any of the witnesses who were on the witness list?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do you want me to tell you the name?
Well, let me tell. Were there a few?
There was one name I recognized, but it was
Okay.
It was from, like, it could have been the same name from somebody I knew when I was like 11 years old, and
Okay.
then another one that I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah. No, that's wise. You're being very cautious. Because we don't want you saying things that might allow people out there to identify who you are. We're doing what we can to protect your anonymity as a juror and respect your privacy. What we'll probably do is since you have a couple of people to talk about, we'll probably go off the audio so that the only people who can hear about it are the people in the courtroom. And the press is not reporting any substance of things we say when we go off audio, okay?
Okay.
And do you think that would make more sense so we can get some more details?
Yes.
All right, any objection to that? All right, what we're going to do now is we are going to go off audio at this point. Broadcast. All right, we are back on audio. Well, thank you for that information. And the length of the trial we anticipate to be about 4 weeks, starting March 29th. Can you make that work for you?
I can.
Okay. Any personal, professional problems, hardships that we should know about if you were to be here?
No.
All right. Great. Thank you very much. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nelson as to juror number 92. Mr. Nelson, you may inquire.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to ask you a series of kind of just general questions, get to know you a little bit better,
Okay.
and then follow up with some of your responses on the questionnaire, if that would be all right.
Okay.
I'm not going to try to trick you. I'll actually read you what you wrote. Did you keep a copy of this?
I did not. No.
Okay. So I'll read you what you wrote, and we'll talk about
Okay.
it. Right? Okay. So if you and I were to meet under different circumstances at a social event, a party, work gathering, whatever, we have our first conversation. What are a couple of things I'm going to learn about you during that conversation?
What that you would learn about me? Very family oriented, friends, very important to me. Love my work.
Okay. You're kind of in the insurance business generally.
Yes.
Personal benefits or homeowner type stuff?
Commercial.
Commercial? Okay. All right. And you've been in that business a while?
Yeah, I've been the same company maybe, I don't know, is it like 15 years?
Okay. And you had obviously heard about this matter prior to filling out this packet, right?
I did.
And when you received the jury summons and the notice that you were a prospective juror in this case, specifically, what was your reaction?
Very shocked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
I didn't expect to be a part of something of this magnitude. It just didn't cross my mind.
Sure, it's not like a shoplifting case or something
Right.
like that.
Yes,
right?
it's not what you really hear of when you.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to do one thing.
Yeah.
Court partner has a hard time if we talk over each other.
Okay.
So, and we're the worst offenders, so. But if you could try to kind of keep a space between the question and answer, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will try as well, Your Honor.
Me too.
Thanks. Did you have concerns about your personal safety, COVID, family safety, any of that type of concern?
The only personal safety matter would be if the only thing that came to mind would be what would happen to me if I was a juror after, like, if somebody found out, or that
Okay.
was my main concern.
Okay. Well, let's kind of work up to that, if you don't mind. What did you think about the government center when you got down here today? When you saw the military and the fencing and all of that stuff, what was your reaction?
Quite honestly, it made me feel pretty protected.
All right. So while you're here, at least you feel safe, you feel protected, right? Were you shocked at the scale of it? Like how many people and how much fencing there was?
How many people I saw, or that would lead me to each particular point along the way to get here.
It was a little, it was a lot, right?
Yes.
Okay. How about when you came into the courtroom and you were told that your photos aren't going to be taken, your pictures not being televised, stuff like that? Did that make you feel better, worse, indifferent?
Indifferent. I knew it wouldn't be.
Okay. So you knew that kind of coming in, that it wasn't, you were not going to be televised?
Correct.
All right. And were you instructed that, like, by the court, or did someone tell you that they're watching, or how did you learn that?
I honestly don't know. I think I just knew that you don't show the faces.
Okay. Just, all right, fair enough. And then you understand that we're doing everything we can to protect your anonymity, but at some point your name may be released, and that would be when the court deems it safe to do so. We have no idea what that means or how long it will take, but at some point your name would be publicly released. How does that make you feel?
I'm pretty confident it'll be okay.
Okay, fair enough. So, can you think of a situation in your personal or professional life where you have been called upon to resolve conflict?
Only maybe in my personal life with family members.
Okay.
That's probably about it.
Well, you understand that your role here as a juror is essentially to dive right into some conflict, right?
Right.
There's obviously a pretty big conflict between the state of Minnesota and Derek Chauvin. That's the global conflict, so to speak. But then if you're a juror in the jury deliberation room, there may be conflict between you and other jurors, or just between other jurors. And what I mean by that is not that I think people are going to start fighting physically, but that there will be people who disagree with you or disagree with others within the group. So that's what I mean by conflict. How do you approach the resolution of conflict, first, when it involves two people, not yourself, and second, when it involves you?
Well, if it's two people, I generally get both sides and try to come to some sort of an agreement.
Okay. So it's kind of talk it through, listen to both sides, try to reach an agreement.
Yes.
How about when it involves you?
You mean as far as like if I'm in a conflict with somebody?
Right.
I do the same thing.
Okay.
Take what the person is saying, make my own decisions on how I'm going to move forward.
Okay. Do you think it's more difficult if you're personally involved to resolve conflict?
Yes.
And why?
I just think you have more emotion when it's you personally, when instead of looking at two people outside of yourself.
Right. So think about it in this context. Is during the course of this trial, there will be evidence that comes into the courtroom, and you will be in the jury room, and you and your jurors, or the fellow jurors, are talking about various pieces of evidence that were admitted during the trial. And one group of jurors thinks that some group or particular piece of evidence is really important, and others don't. Now, you're kind of in the middle, you don't know. How do you approach that type of a situation?
If I'm in the middle and I don't know?
Mm-hmm. But there's a conflict, right, between the interpretation of this evidence.
I'd probably do the same thing, just listen to both sides and make the best decision upon what they're saying.
Okay. Now, ultimately, you understand that a jury decision has to be unanimous, meaning all 12 of you would have to agree. But you have this division, right? How do you work towards resolution of that conflict?
I don't know, other than just stating what my feelings are.
Okay. I mean, one piece of evidence may tie to another piece of evidence, and someone may recall something differently than you. So is it just sort of talking it through, looking at all the evidence, and trying to reach a decision?
Yeah.
Are you the type of person that will just agree with someone simply to get this process over with, or make a decision?
No, I'm not, but I probably wouldn't be the first one to make a statement or...
You probably would not be?
No.
Okay. Why do you say that?
I'm more of an observer.
Okay. Will you speak your opinion if you think it's important?
I will.
But are you kind of sit back, get everyone's perspectives, and then pout, so to speak?
Yes.
Is that an accurate kind of description?
Did you say pout or pounce?
Pounce.
Oh, pounce, yes. Yes.
Not pout.
Or pout.
Or pout, maybe, I don't know. But you're not going to just agree with people for the sake of agreeing with people.
Not in this situation, no.
Okay. I mean, I guess it's different than what restaurant we go to, or right? Mm-hmm. Have you ever been confronted with or tasked with trying to decide if someone is telling you the truth about a certain situation?
In life, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
How do you kind of make that analysis?
Just the same way. I listen to what someone's telling me and then make a decision on what I've heard.
Okay. Do you think that two people can observe the same event and have completely different interpretations of what happened?
I do.
And they may be seeing the same thing, and they ascribe certain meaning to something. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that happens?
Some of it is just personality. I mean.
Okay. What about personal experiences? Do you think our personal experiences formulate how we look at or observe events?
I do. Yeah. Things that have happened in your past, or people that you're around. I think that forms a lot of who you are and what you think. And
okay. What about your training, a person's training or education? Do you think that may affect how they perceive an event?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Can you think of a circumstance where that may come up?
Training or education? I mean, if you're given tools or I guess I'm not really going to have a good answer for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let me give you an example. A wall falls down, right? And there's an architect and a builder and a truck driver, right? And we got to figure out how to put this wall back up. Do you think that their training and experience may come into play?
Yes.
Okay. And some people may have, you can maybe easily take their opinion off the table, and others are you're going to listen to a little bit more carefully?
Yes, yeah.
Now, in that same situation, would you simply believe someone based upon their training and education over someone else who's observing it, that same situation, just by virtue of their training and education?
No, I guess it depends on the situation, but
right.
No, I wouldn't just go based on what someone's trained or educated. I'd have my own thoughts on.
Like, what if you were to learn that truck driver has built 10,000 walls in his life? And even though he's a truck driver, he's got a lot of experience.
Sure, it'd give him credibility.
Right. And what if you learn that architect, he only has just graduated from college and he's never designed anything? Do you think that could make a difference?
Yeah, I do.
Ultimately your job here is, as a juror, is to listen to the evidence as it's presented in court to analyze it and to apply the law as the judge gives it to you. At the end of the case, the judge is going to tell you what the law is that you need to decide. And sometimes, occasionally, jurors will read the law and they'll say, that can't be right. There's no way that that's right. Or this should be changed, right? If that were to happen, if you were to read the law and say, I think the law should be different, can you follow the law as the judge gives it to you, regardless of whether you think it's wrong or it should be changed?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for those answers. I'm going to ask you some questions, some follow-up questions on your questionnaire.
Okay.
Again, the questionnaire kind of makes reference to, and I think some of your answers make reference to a video, and I want to make sure we're talking about the same video. There was a bystander video that was uploaded to Facebook. It went viral, became international news. Is that the video, as you understand, that you've seen?
I've not seen the full video.
Okay, but when we talk generally about the video, that's the video?
It is, yeah.
Have you seen, there were other videos that were released, like body cameras, there were some surveillance videos from local businesses. Have you seen any of those videos?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. And the video, you said you've not seen it in its entirety. Is that right?
Correct.
The bystander video? Have you just seen it like on the news, or have you seen it like?
Yeah, just like a clip of it.
Okay. So at no point did you go on Facebook or social media and try to find the original video?
No.
Okay. And you estimated that you had seen that video 4 to 5 times?
Mm-hmm.
And you had obviously read some news stories and had conversations with friends, right, about this case?
Yeah.
And so you were able to kind of write down a paragraph or so about what you remembered hearing prior when you filled this out.
Right.
Okay. Would you agree that some of what you heard or recalled may just be wrong?
Yes.
Okay. And you can look at the evidence as it's presented in court, and even if there's something that you kind of remember hearing from before, can you set that aside and focus only on the evidence as it's presented in court?
Yeah.
All right. And there may be information, whether it's true or not, that is not admitted in this trial. Can you set those other pieces of information about Mr. Chauvin or Mr. Floyd that you may have heard, again, and only focus on what you hear here?
Yes.
All right. You were asked about your impression, your general impression of both Mr. Chauvin and Mr. Floyd. And for both, you had a somewhat negative, you checked the box somewhat negative, right? I mean,
I did.
that's fair enough. All right. And what you wrote about Mr. Chauvin is you wrote, the media paints Derek Chauvin as an aggressive cop with tax problems. All right?
Just what I heard.
Understood. And again, you're entitled to form your own opinion. You're entitled to form, you were exposed to information. Nobody's questioning that, all right? But you understand that whether there's a companion case or something else going on in a different county, it has nothing to do with this particular case?
Yes.
All right. And you may have that. So I guess the question is if you're in the jury room, right, and you never hear anything about a tax case, in this case, are you going to go, I think we should not believe him because of that tax situation?
No, that's not going to, no, that wouldn't sway my decision.
Okay. Well, and likewise, too, with respect to Mr. Floyd, you heard that what you wrote is you heard George Floyd's record wasn't clean and he abused drugs at some point, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you had heard about him? Mm-hmm. Now, again, whether or not any of that information comes in to trial here, can you likewise set that information aside, what you may have heard, and again, focus only on the evidence that's presented in this trial?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what I'm hearing is just coming from certain parties, and it's not necessarily
true.
True, or yeah, I mean,
Okay. You were asked about your conversations with friends and family members or potentially posting any information on social media about the case. Did you ever post anything on social media about
no.
this case?
I don't post on social media.
Okay. But you did have conversations with friends and family then, and when you were asked what opinions have you expressed, you wrote, "I don't believe he deserved to die and that the cops used excessive force, but I don't believe he is completely innocent." So I'm going to assume the he in this situation is Mr. Floyd.
Correct.
All right. But you formed the opinion that the police used excessive force.
From what I heard, I did.
Okay. You're not a police officer, I presume?
I am not.
You've not had police training?
No.
And are you able to articulate the legal definition of what constitutes excessive force?
No, I am not.
All right. So I guess my question is again, it's perfectly fine that you have formed an opinion. I'm not questioning that. Mm-hmm. And that your opinion was that excessive force that was used. Can you set that aside, kind of like become a blank slate and move forward?
Yes.
And listen only to the evidence in the case?
Right. Mm-hmm.
You were asked a question of whether you believe your community has been negatively or positively affected by any of the protests that have taken place in the Twin Cities area, and without identifying your city, you wrote, not my close community.
No.
So I'm going to assume that what you mean by that is there was no rioting that occurred in your
correct.
city,
No.
right?
Correct.
Is kind of something that's emerged as we've talked to jurors over the last couple of weeks is the difference between protests and riots. Do you think there's a difference?
Yes.
Okay. How would you define the difference between a protest and a riot?
I would say riot generally involves violence. A protest is standing up for what you believe, or gathering and with like-minded people.
Okay. And neither protests nor riots occurred in your city?
No.
Okay. Now, but generally speaking, do you think that, I'm going to differentiate between protesting and rioting in the Minneapolis area, generally speaking, right, the Twin Cities area. Do you think that's positive or negative?
That there's a difference?
Well, just, do you think that there was a positive or negative impact as a result of protesting in this city?
I personally think actually both. I think some things led to the rioting, and I think that some people brought awareness through their protesting.
Okay. You had your purse stolen at one point?
I did.
All right. And you checked that you were very unsatisfied with how the police handled that situation.
I did?
You did.
Oh. Okay, maybe I misspoke. I honestly, I don't remember much about calling the police on it. It was a long time ago.
Sure.
Oh, I can't believe I wrote that.
Okay. I just was, I didn't know if there was anything. So let's ask you, do you remember calling the police when your purse was stolen?
I honestly don't remember a lot about it. I just remember that they had retrieved my purse after.
Okay. Is there anything about that situation that would bias you against police officers in
No.
general? Okay.
No. Oh, I can't believe I did that.
Well, now you know what we need when we say things.
You think about it,
I
things
don't know,
change.
maybe I was just, yeah.
There are a series of kind of broad blanket statements in the questionnaire, and you were asked to kind of rank your opinion from somewhat agree, strongly disagree. Do you remember that generally?
Yeah.
And I want to ask you just about a couple of them. The statement is made, discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be, and you somewhat disagree with that statement. So media, discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be. So you disagree with that. Why?
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
It is it's a double negative.
Okay.
So, discrimination is not as bad as the media makes it out to be.
And I said I somewhat disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess it depends on what station you listen to, but I don't think we see all of what goes on. I think we just see a highlight of, things that get escalated to a unfortunate point.
Okay. The kind of a corollary statement reads, blacks and other minorities do not receive equal treatment as whites in the criminal justice system, and you somewhat agreed with that.
I do.
So I think in both situations you acknowledge that discrimination exists, right?
I do.
But it may not be every single incident. Is that
Correct.
fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. You were asked about police in my community make me feel safe, and you strongly agreed with that statement?
Yeah, I've just had a few instances I've called where either, something minor happened at my place and they arrived in a quick manner and...
Professional and
Yeah.
made you feel safe.
Correct.
And you strongly disagreed with the notion of defunding the Minneapolis Police Department.
Correct.
Okay. I guess the question being is, it seems that you have a healthy respect for police officers.
I do.
A very strong respect is another way of saying that.
I do.
Okay. Now, you have a police officer on trial here, and you have police officers who will be testifying. Will you take the word of a police officer simply by virtue of the fact that he's a police officer to be more credible than the testimony of other people?
No.
Can you assess the testimony of all people equally, all
Right.
witnesses?
Right. I can.
You were asked a couple of questions about the Black Lives and Blue Lives Matter. With respect to Black Lives Matter, you wrote that you had a somewhat favorable opinion and you believe people of other races are treated unfairly, but I don't get involved to support the cause. I mean, so you're not out protesting yourself, in other words, or participating in that organization or movement. Is that
No, I am not.
But you have a favorable view of them.
Yeah. I believe they have the right to do it.
Okay, and you have a very favorable opinion of Blue Lives Matter, and you wrote, "I would be terrified if our police departments were dismantled. However, it is obvious that change needs to happen."
Yes.
Your mother was a nurse.
She was.
She retired or passed on?
She's passed away.
I'm sorry for that.
Thank you.
You were asked a series of questions about some principles of law, and you were asked, do you believe our criminal justice system works? Why or why not? And you wrote, yes, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So, again, will you apply the presumption of innocence in this particular case?
Yes.
The last question you were asked is whether you want to serve as a juror on this case, and you wrote not sure, and you explained that I would be fearful of any backlash for my choice of a verdict. So I guess my question is, you understand there are two possible outcomes at the end of this case, right?
I do.
Guilty or not guilty. Would your fearfulness of whatever the backlash may be cause you to render a verdict that you thought was wrong, but simply to avoid any potential backlash?
No.
Okay. You feel you could be a fair and impartial juror in this case?
I do.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, juror number 92.
Hello.
Just to follow up on a couple of things, I see that you have a bachelor's degree.
I do.
What is it in?
Communication.
Communication. It also indicates on your survey that you left our state for a brief period of time, 4 years. Was that to attend college?
It was.
Okay. And then you came back. You just couldn't stay away.
Yep. Family's too important.
All right.
And I love the state.
You made a couple of comments, and just following up on some questions that counsel raised regarding your belief that you somewhat agree that blacks and other minorities do not receive equal treatment as whites. You disagreed with the proposition that police in the country treat whites and blacks equally. And I'm just wondering if you've had conversations with close friends, work associates, in which those opinions have been shared with you by people who've actually experienced some sort of mistreatment.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some friends that have been treated differently because of their race. That's pretty much.
And without revealing who those friends are, can you share with us a little bit about how they were treated differently? What happened to them?
Just names were called. That's basically what happened to them.
I mean, racial slurs?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about in terms of just treatment for somebody who wouldn't be that overtly mean to someone, but just in terms of their being treated by folks, say walking into a store or some other social situation? Have they ever expressed any sort of discrimination that they've faced in those situations?
No, it was mainly just through school.
Ah, okay. You say that you strongly disagree with the proposition of defunding the Minneapolis Police Department. Can you tell us a little bit why that's something that would bother you? Because I think you also indicated something about being frightened if something like that were to happen.
I guess maybe what I was going by was a blurb that they had on the news where people were saying that they wanted to do like a community outreach instead of have law enforcement present, and that I guess would terrify me.
How do you think that would work out?
I don't think it would work out very well.
Okay.
No.
Why is that?
I mean, just look at riots. I don't think that it doesn't seem to quite solve the problems.
Okay. Back to some of the questions that you heard about some of the people who were involved here. You indicated that you heard that perhaps the defendant's spouse had filed for divorce. I'm wondering what, if any, effect that might have.
It doesn't have any effect.
Okay.
I was just trying to say anything I knew or had heard.
Okay. You also indicated that you heard that George Floyd's record wasn't clean, and I'm wondering if you can recall, specifically anything that you heard about George Floyd's record, what he may have done prior to the incident.
If I recall correctly, I had heard information about drug charges or being involved with drugs.
Anything else? Any other acts aside from use of drugs or drug charges?
No.
Have you ever had a close friend or a family member struggle with addiction to illegal drugs or alcohol?
Alcohol.
Alcohol?
I have. Mm-hmm.
If you were to hear that George Floyd struggled with illegal drugs, for example, do you think that might make you feel more favorably or less favorably toward him?
In this particular instance, or just about him in general?
Yeah. First in general, and then maybe for this specific incident. And I should always give you the choice of no opinion, right? So do you think that would have any effect on your opinion of him generally?
Quite honestly, maybe. if it was somebody I was going to trust, if in that kind of instance, it might give me pause. But I do understand that people, there's reasons that they struggle with addiction.
So tell
It
me
doesn't make them a bad person, I guess I should say. It would
Okay.
just make me cautious.
And why is that? Why would you want to be more cautious around a person who's struggling with drugs?
Mental state might not be the best, depending on why, they've reached that point. Maybe fear of how people act when they're intoxicated.
Tell me a little bit about that. What has been your own observation of how people might act when they're intoxicated, either on alcohol or drugs?
Just the level of anger people can get to under intoxication.
Do you believe that people who are intoxicated may tend to act more violently or aggressively when they're under the influence?
Yes, they can.
And when we say intoxication, oftentimes we're referring to alcohol, but I'm including drug intoxication as well. Do you think that someone who's taken drugs, illegal drugs, may act more violently or aggressively than someone else who has not?
I do.
Do you believe that's always the case, or that perhaps
No.
it depends on the drug or it depends on the person?
I think it depends on the drug, the person, what situation they're in.
Now, someone may hold the opinion that if a person is harmed and they've been using illegal drugs, they kind of get what's coming to them. And I'm wondering what you think about that statement or what your views are on that.
I don't think that's true.
And why is that?
I don't. If someone uses drugs, that I don't think that there should be ramifications of violence for that.
Okay. You indicated that you have a respect for law enforcement. I'm assuming that you also would agree that it's important to cooperate with law enforcement if they approach you.
Correct.
Is that something you would do, I'm assuming?
Would do and have.
Okay. Tell me about that. You say you have.
Oh, just getting pulled over and just making the proper steps. Getting your license and insurance out and cooperating with the police.
And this has happened to you, and you did that. You cooperated.
Correct.
People may hold the opinion that if one does not immediately cooperate with the police, does not comply with their requests or their orders, and they're subsequently harmed, they might get what's coming to them as well. What do you think of that?
I don't believe that.
Why is that?
Well, I don't think that. I don't think someone has something coming to them. I mean, there's obviously rules and regulations for, acting outside of the law. And there's also rules and regulations for how you treat those people.
How you, as in how law enforcement treats those people?
Correct.
Okay. Well, you recognize then that some people may not immediately comply with law enforcement, and that would not be an excuse for law enforcement to use excessive force?
I do. I believe that.
Without identifying your employer or providing any identifying information, I'm just interested in hearing about what you specifically do in your job. What does it mean to be a client advocate?
I work on accounts of our insureds, so I'm kind of the day-to-day go-between.
And
I guess.
so you communicate client concerns to your
Correct.
company? Okay. Have you been working at the office since the pandemic, or from home?
Strictly at home.
Strictly at home. How's that been working out?
I love it.
Okay. Maybe you're not going to go back?
We have to go back. We have to have an office presence.
Okay. Do you have any concerns coming here? If you were called as a juror, if you're seated as a juror, you have to come downtown, be around some people in relatively close contact, although we're distancing here. Does that raise any concerns for you?
No.
Do you think maybe we're taking too many precautions and this is a little overblown? Or?
No, I don't. The main person I was keeping safe has been vaccinated, so I'm a little less freaked out about it, I guess I would say.
Okay, fair enough. One moment, Your Honor. Just to follow up, you indicated on the survey regarding your opinion of Blue Lives Matter, and this is where you said you'd be terrified if police departments were dismantled. But you went on to say that however, there is obvious change that needs to happen. Can you share with us what is the obvious change that you believe needs to happen?
I guess I would say it does look like, for I guess what's portrayed on the media is other races aren't necessarily treated fairly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your answers today. And Your Honor, the state passes for cause.
Right. Juror 92, you will serve on our jury. And so we're going to have you come back on March 29th at 9 a.m. The jury office will be in contact with you if there's any change, but they'll probably be in contact just to remind you and maybe give you other facilities or other logistics information. But for now, you can go with the deputy. They'll take some paperwork from you. You have the letter that got you in here. Make sure you keep that safe and
Okay.
bring it back next time. So
Okay.
we'll see you on March 29th.